talking about estate planning, are we talking about after death?
It's definitely the most important document.
You're talking about mitigating all those taxes and all those expenses.
The business, which was the bulk of his assets.
Please look at it, and that makes things much easier
Yeah.
because you're not going to be there when those bills are going to be looked at.
Estate planning view, I think that's where the beneficiary designation though has the most.
Hi, welcome to Simple Wealth Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Gakhar. Each week, I bring simple financial security ideas for successful business owners and professionals like you to help you build and maintain your lifestyle and legacy. As an insurance and investment advisor, I work with business owners and self-employed professionals. I see a lot of you are always looking for tax advice, accounting advice, legal advice, estate planning, and investment advice. And when I work with you all, I always work with a team of lawyers, accountants, estate planners, and investment advisor. As your trusted advisor, I want to make sure that I bring the best to you. You usually hear everything from me, but now I feel through this podcast, I can bring all those people here who are my support system, and you can hear directly from them. This is the reason I started this podcast, where business owners and self-employed professionals like you can always go and get the ideas and answers for their questions regarding how they can protect and grow their wealth in the most tax-efficient manner. Again, being an insurance and investment advisor, and very specifically working with business owners and self-employed professionals, I feel each guest will bring a lot of value to you all. And today I have Michelle Singer from RBC as my guest. Welcome, Mitch.
Thank you.
Mitch was trained as a lawyer, and he received his law degree from Western, where he received a special designation affirming his area of concentration as taxation. In his over 20 years in the insurance industry, he has worked for a large insurance company and has been an advisor, so he truly understands the needs of a client. You know, you face the clients in the
Absolutely.
past. Yes. He takes pride in helping advisors like me, clients, and their accountants and lawyers. And he truly understands the tax and estate planning benefits of insurance products. I'm very, very excited to hear from you today, Mitch, and your background, tax background, everyone wants to hear. And most of my clients, as I said, are business owners and self-employed professionals. So hearing from you, I'm sure this is really going to add a lot of value to everyone's knowledge. Once again, welcome here.
Thank you so much. I'm excited.
Thank you. So Mitch, I just want to start straight away from estate planning. As a lawyer, I want you to tell everyone what is estate planning.
You know what, in my world, too often I see people trying to overcomplicate what estate planning is. And clients will come to me, or advisors will come to me and say, my client needs a trust, or my client needs to do this. And I always bring it back to the real world. Those are the structures that make things work. But the first part of it is, what do you want to do? What is it as an individual you want to achieve? Where do you want your stuff to go? If I were to boil down estate planning into its simplest thing, it's getting your stuff where you want it to go when you die with as little hassle and as little tax as possible. The rest is for your advisors to work out for you. That's why you hire good lawyers, good accountants, good insurance and investment advisors, and you bring all those people in and you build a team around you, or you find that one trusted advisor who can build that team for you,
right,
to ensure that your stuff goes where you want it to go with as little hassle and as little tax as possible. That should be your only goal.
Wonderful. So Mitch, let me ask you a little more depth here.
Okay.
When we're talking about estate planning, are we talking about after death, or is there something you do it while you're alive?
Well, you have to start the process while you're alive, for sure, because I think that having strong powers of attorney when you are alive and can't make decisions
Right.
is a really important thing.
So that is wonderful, the way you answered what estate plan is. I think most of the people are able to relate to it. They can understand it. It's not only we're planning while we're alive, we're planning about the death, but at the same time, we're planning something with powers of attorneys while you're alive as well. So very rightly said, Mitch. Now, what are some of the key aspects of creating an estate plan?
I think at the top of the list is usually the will. That's the document that speaks from death. It's definitely the most important document, but people have to keep in mind that wills are a creature of statute. They don't exist without the provincial law that says this is what a will is. And I really do encourage clients all the time to not use the online will kits and to make sure that they go to a lawyer. You just think about it, we're in Ontario. Anyone who owns a home, if they own one mortgage free, it's $1.5 million, $2 million before you even start.
Yeah.
Before you look at your other investments, if you're a business owner or a professional, what your business is worth, your practice is worth, you're at $1.5 million, $2 million before you even start just on your house.
Yeah.
And people don't want to spend $500 to get a will done properly. And if you don't meet all the formalities of a will, if it's not signed properly, it's not a will. And it is useless. It is not worth the paper that it's printed on. So it is really important, in my opinion, that not only do you have a will that has the right legal clauses in it, but it also meets the formalities necessary to be a will properly. Because if you mess one of those things up, you could have done the best job yourself, which you probably wouldn't compare to a lawyer. And there are lots of other little things that you can that a lawyer who's experienced in estate planning, and when I say go to a lawyer, you don't go to your real estate lawyer who says I'll do it for you as a favor.
Yeah.
There are lots of estates lawyer. It doesn't mean you have to go down to an expensive big downtown firm to get it done. There are lots of estates lawyers who work in the suburbs who are very good at what they do and are more than happy to help. You do have to remember, though, when you look at the process, that probating a will is an expensive and time-consuming process.
So I'm going to stop you right here.
Okay.
If you can tell my viewers what is probating.
Okay, so the word probate comes from the same Latin word as the word prove.
Okay. Prove.
Think about this for a sec. You go to your bank and you deposit $100,000 in a bank account. They check your ID, they know who you are, you go and make deposits and withdrawals, and the people at the branch know who you are, or you're logging in online through your bank card, which is totally secure, but it's only you who's dealing with it.
Yeah.
Now, you pass away. Now, your husband, your kids, someone comes into the bank and says, look at this piece of paper. It says that I'm now the executor and look after my spouse's or my mom's stuff.
Right.
And the bank says, we never dealt with you.
We don't
Sim
know
is
you.
the one who signed.
Yeah.
We don't know if this is actually the last will and testament of Sim. We want you to go to the courts and get it approved. We want you to prove that this is the last will and testament. And once we have that, then we can take instructions from you as the estate trustee. So that's really what the probate process is about. That's the reason for it. Now, that being said, it's expensive. There's a 1.5% estate administration tax in Ontario. Basically, once you get over the basic small amount at the bottom, it's 1.5% on almost everything. It's time consuming. True story. When I was articling, I lost a great uncle. He had no kids, no spouse. My mother, whose home I lived in, was the estate trustee. There were 3 beneficiaries: my mother, me, and my brother.
Okay.
All under the same house. There was no problem getting documents signed. And I was articling at the time and had the resources to easily do all the documentation. And it wasn't a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
It was one bank account basically, and a couple GICs all at one bank, but it was enough that they wanted probate.
Right.
That being said, and I was motivated because
Yeah.
I was a beneficiary.
Of course.
So from my point of view, I was like, let's get it done. We can get everything signed. Everybody's at the house for dinner every night. Like, it was easy peasy.
Mm-hmm.
It still took 4 months
Wow.
to get that approval back from the courts. And that's with no one contesting anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's with no difficulty getting a signature from someone because they're out of province. I mean, now today, I think the province will take electronic signatures on stuff or
Yeah, that
but-
could be.
But remember, wills have to be the original. That's what the court wants. That is what you're getting probated, is the original will with the wet ink signatures on them. And it was easy for me to do the documents, but then I think I had them submitted to the courts within about 2 or 3 weeks. And I sat and waited for 17 weeks.
Wow.
For
What is the
them to come
time
back.
right now for something like that?
It varies, obviously. Court, because it's not, the courts aren't just dealing with probate, right? Like, they're dealing with other estates issues at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So how it comes on their
Yeah.
docket, it depends. And again, it's not about how quickly they can do it. It's how much complication you're presenting to them when you present it to them.
When you presented that.
If somebody contests something or says that's not the last will and testament, or they say there are lots of ways to contest a will. That they were a dependent and they need support that isn't supported by the will. These are all things that slow down the process. So it is very time consuming. It's interesting from a tax point of view too, because think about something, and I think most of your clients are probably hyper aware of this, is that you're deemed to dispose all of your property immediately before your death for its
So
fair
I would
market
like
value.
you to just explain it once again to everyone. What do you mean by deemed disposition of all your assets?
So whatever capital properties you have, your RSPs and RIFs as well, you're deemed to, as if you sold them.
Yeah.
Right before you died.
Yeah.
And the fair market value of those properties, less any cost base, if it's something that has a cost base, becomes income to you. You know,
And that has to go in your terminal tax.
and it goes on your terminal tax return.
Yeah.
Now I want you to think about something. You had money sitting in something that was market correlated,
Mm-hmm.
and the markets were on their way down when you pass away. Now you don't get to choose when you pass away, obviously.
Of course.
Now the will needs to be probated. There's no estate trustee for whoever's holding that investment to take a decision from. So it's not like they could say, oh, the markets are going down, let's move to cash. You have to watch it ride down, yet your taxes are still based on whatever the value was when you passed away.
Oh
And
my God.
That's scary.
Right.
That's scary, and it's real. Look, it can go the other way too. The markets could fly high post-death,
Right.
and you could have to deal with that side of it. And I guess if you're making money, who's complaining? If you have to pay tax when you make money.
Yeah.
But you have no control. That decision making isn't ultimately in the hands of the people who should and will have it eventually. So that's difficult. Another aspect here is some people, you know, if you have a child with special needs particularly, or you have what we call spendthrift issues, maybe one of your beneficiaries has a gambling problem, a drug problem, just a spending problem.
Yeah.
You don't want them to have all the money at once, and you want to introduce trustees. Those trustees will be paid. Even if you don't use a public trustee, trustees are entitled to compensation. That costs money. And your lawyers and accountants, if you would be naive to think if lawyers and accountants don't look at the size of an estate and determining what the state can pay.
Yeah.
So, you know, by the time you're done, you could be up to 10 or 15% for a complex estate in terms of your cost post-mortem, which is
If you
expensive.
do not have the proper planning done.
Yeah, there are ways to mitigate it.
There are ways to mitigate it. And can you give a little bit of an idea what is an estimated cost for all this stuff?
Like I said, it's usually for a simple estate, it can be down in sort of the 4 to 6% range.
Mm-hmm.
When you get into complex estates, you can easily run into the 10 to 15%
Wow,
range.
that's like really a lot.
That's a tax.
Oh my god.
Like, and that includes the 1.5% estate administration tax, but it's a big number.
That's a big number.
But there are lots of ways to mitigate it.
Absolutely. And now, since you're talking about mitigating all those taxes and all those expenses, I would like to again talk about my business owner clients and myself about professional clients. I want to ask them, there is a concept of dual will planning. There's a primary will and secondary will, we call it as. So what do you want to tell them, somebody who has a corporation, but they say, I have a will.
You have a will, that's great, but the value of that company is going to be reflected then in the value of your estate, and you'd have to pay probate, and you'd have to go through the process. Now, this goes back, I think it was in the 1980s. It was called the Granovsky case, and it's good law now in pretty much all of Canada. So Mr. Granovsky owned a company, your clients, you've seen the trucks all over the highway, Atlantic Packaging.
Yeah.
Okay, and his lawyers came up with this idea. They said, listen, Mr. Granovsky has 2 sets of assets. He has his house, his passive investments that he has personally, all that stuff. We're okay paying probate on that.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, the business, his successors were his kids and grandkids and nieces and nephews. Like, it was all family, and they were all well aware of the plan. They didn't really require probate. They didn't need the will proven to them.
Right.
So the lawyers came up with the idea, why don't we do 2 wills? They said, we'll have 1 will that deals with all that stuff. We don't mind paying probate on it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll pay it on the house, on investments, whatever. Bank accounts, sure, done. But as far as the business, which was the bulk of his assets by far, like it was in the tens of millions of dollars, we'll have this through the second will, and no one's going to ask for probate on that will. So when we have to list the assets that are going through the will, we won't have to pay probate. We won't have to go through the process. And initially, the courts kind of balked at that idea. And I'm going to tell you, as a lawyer and a critical thinker, to have 2 documents purporting to be your last will and testament is a little bit difficult to wrap your head around.
Right.
But that being said, if you're clear about sort of this will deals with this asset or this set of assets, and this will deals with everything else, is sort of the way. So the primary, like the terminology we typically use is the primary will is the one you get probate on. And the secondary will is where you hold your business assets that won't require probate, because, if you've done any decent planning with your business, you have a shareholders agreement with your partners anyways.
Mm-hmm.
There are buy-sell provisions already built in there.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what's going to happen. No one needs a will to tell them this, because this is triggered 60 or 90 days after you die anyways.
Yeah.
Those assets are being sold, and so it makes things a lot smoother and faster, without a doubt.
So the suggestion is that anybody who has a corporation should have 2 wills.
They should at least look at it.
And that makes things much easier,
Yeah.
because you're not going to be there when those bills are going to be looked at.
That's
finally, right. And in your absence. So it's good to have, and coming it from a lawyer with so much of experience, I think, thank you so much. That was wonderful. That's great. So now, since we're talking about insurance, investments, and then there is insurance companies offer seg funds, segregated funds.
Yeah.
There is so many, and they are one of those type of investments for people, they're individually owned assets. So I would like you to explain a little bit to the audience, what are seg funds? Because I'm always asked, I have money sitting in my bank.
Yep.
And then what is the difference when the money is sitting with the insurance company? That is called mutual funds. This is called seg funds. What is the difference between the 2?
At the end of the day, really all a seg fund is a mutual fund with an insurance wrapper around it.
Okay, good answer. Okay.
In its simplest terms. But with that comes all of the benefits that the Insurance Act provides for insurance contracts. And I think that's where clients maybe often aren't aware. Just because I can appoint a beneficiary under the Insurance Act, like, what does it mean? What does that actually get for me? On the non-financial side, I think the big one, especially for professional clients who, even if they're incorporated, have personal liability for professional errors and omissions,
Yeah.
It gets you creditor protection. If you have a spouse, a child, a grandchild, or a parent, or any combination thereof as beneficiaries of that contract, then there is a complete exemption from seizure under the Insurance Act. And that, in and of itself, is a huge benefit.
Yeah.
From a pragmatic point of view, you also are bringing a bunch of funds under one contract. So, a lot of people don't think about this when they're young, but as you get older, you want things simpler.
Yeah.
And instead of getting
Multiple,
T5s from a million different places and waiting for them all to come in, and maybe you were on top of things and you got your tax returns done, and then one more T-slip shows up and you're like, oh, I've got to deal with that.
And this happens.
With the Seg fund, all of the funds, one T3, done. Here's all your information, makes things simpler.
Yeah.
From an estate planning view, I think that's where the beneficiary designation, though, has the most benefit.
Yes.
Because where you have a direct beneficiary designation, even if it's not one of those 4 categories of preferred beneficiaries that I just mentioned around creditor protection, the assets pass directly to those people outside of your estate. There's no estate administration tax. It never gets into the estate. It's never part of the will.
That's straight, yeah.
And there's no delay anymore either. Typically with a seg fund, as soon as we get a claim and a death certificate, unless a death certificate is something to be questioned, which 99.9% of the time it's not, it's coming from Canada or the US or England or somewhere like that, or someone was on vacation and clearly something happened, we just pay. When we get a death claim, and this goes for both segregated funds and life insurance, quite frankly, if we get a death claim and there's no reason to contest it, we don't want the money anymore as an insurance company. We want to give it to the beneficiaries.
Yes.
And even if beneficiaries are fighting, we'll pay it to the courts. We don't want the money anymore. We fulfilled our obligation under the contract, and our obligation is when our clients pass away and it's a life insurance contract, we pay, and we pay right away.
And that's what I want everyone to hear, that because that's why this is the difference between an insurance. When you're getting a seg fund, it is attached to the insurance act, insurance law. There is a huge difference. Okay, Mitch, that's wonderful. Now here's the tough question.
Okay.
And the tough question is that my clients sometimes ask, they want to understand many of these benefits, but they ask why seg funds are more expensive from the management fee point, because that perspective where this is like MERs are very expensive.
They are.
And is it actually worth it?
You know what? It's funny because I asked myself that same question. Early in my career, I was on the road with an investment wholesaler that I worked with all the time. We covered the same territory and we spent a lot of time. So every time I was presenting, I had to listen to his presentation first. And he was a dynamic speaker and amazing. And I asked myself that same question. And I looked at that list that I was talking about. The cost of probate for a complex estate is somewhere in the 10 to 15% range. It can range.
Yeah.
You're guessing to an extent, but it's somewhere in the 10 to 15% range. Whereas the difference in MERs between a mutual fund and the same mutual fund with a segregated fund insurance wrapper on it might be as little as 20 basis points.
Yeah.
So I said to myself, well, look, if the person passed away the first year, they would have paid 20 basis points, 0.2% more in management fees, but it would have cost them 15% or 12% or 13%. So definitely in those early years, seg funds are actually cheaper than the mutual funds, even though you're paying that little fee, because the money's going directly to the beneficiary outside the estate. So I actually built a bunch of graphs and spreadsheets to kind of look at it. And Again, it depends how big the spread is. It
Right.
depends on how complex the estate is. But what I found is, in most cases, when you look at anyone in their 60s or 70s especially, it becomes actually cheaper to buy the seg fund than the mutual fund, because there's so many years before those small MERs would catch up to that big estate cost at the back end. And again, that's part of what makes it a no-brainer. And they're the same funds, right? Like whether you look at RBC's product, which uses like stuff from our global asset management team, or you look at most of the other companies, they're all funds that you would probably buy and match your risk profile on a standalone basis as mutual funds.
Right.
And you can buy pretty much the same thing with an insurance wrapper. It's not that the investment is any different. This industry learned a long time ago, investment people are good at managing the investment side, insurance companies are good at managing risks and reserves.
Yeah.
And when you put that all together into one package, you do get the best of both worlds, and that's why seg funds work. Now, for your clients, they also get the guarantees and the creditor protection too that comes with all of that. And when you put that all together, it starts to be really sensible and a really good way of organizing at least part of your affairs. Nothing ever has to be all or nothing.
Yeah.
No one ever says that, but it is a useful tool to consider as part of your overall estate planning bucket, so to speak.
And I love how you said it, mutual fund wrapped with insurance wrapper becomes a seg fund.
Yeah.
So when there are extra benefits attached, and MERs are actually, if you really look at it, it's not that big an expense.
Look, the MER that you're paying, really what you're paying for with the MER are the guarantees. The fact that you've got a 75 or 100% maturity guarantee, a 75 or 100% death benefit guarantee, and you want more guarantee, you can pay a little more.
Yeah.
Right? Like and people can understand that, and that's what you're paying for.
Yeah.
All of those insurance related benefits that come with saving the probate and everything associated with it and the speed, that's free. That's just a benefit that, because it's now under the Insurance Act, you get. You're getting all that, and that's not what you're paying for. What you're paying for with that extra MER is the guarantee. So, which, quite frankly, Canadians love guarantees. We have the most guaranteed insurance products
I love
almost
guarantees.
Anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
More than even on the American side of the border.
Yeah.
And we love that.
Yeah.
And this is just another way to say, hey, I can have some market risk, and I have the downside protection that this contract will give me. And I pay a little bit for it, and people are very often okay with that.
They're absolutely. And you know what, Mitch? I think what you're saying is very easy to understand for most people, because this is a very simple language coming from a lawyer who's attached to an insurance company. I have so many questions more, Mitch.
Well,
I have the list of at least 6 or 7 more questions that are asked by my clients, by my high net worth clients, my business owner clients, and my professional clients. I think we need to have you again as part 2.
It would be my pleasure. You know, I often say that, you know, one of my strengths in this business has always been I speak 3 languages. I speak English, I speak insurance, and I speak tax, and I really translate amongst all 3 of them. And I hope that your clients and prospective clients not only find this informative, but can actually understand it and have it, hear it in language. They're hearing it in language that they get.
That's what I wanted, and thank you so much, and thank you
pleasure.
for coming here. It was a wonderful session, very informative and very helpful for everyone. So I thank you once again, and we're going to have you here again.
Okay,
you're
you
going
got
with
it.
a promise
Twist
of coming
my
back.
rubber arm.
Perfect. And that was another episode of the Simple Wealth Wisdom podcast. Please let us know in the comments what you like the most about this podcast, and if there's anything else you want to see or ask, and I'll make sure to bring that to you in the future podcast. We can bring definitely Mitch back to you if you have any more questions from it in particular. Watch for us again next week. Until next time, stay safe. I'm Sim Gakhar. Thank you.